want to go ahead. I want to start today off with a little bit of a background story like I always do when I'm up here, because I think it's just, again, so important that as a teacher you can share your inspiration, why you were inspired to share on the topic that you're going to share on. So for me, it was a matter of starting down the path of a certain topic. So lately I've been teaching a lot on the fruits of the Spirit, and I was going to roll with that. And it just felt like it was the natural thing to do. And all of a sudden, I got to a place where it didn't feel right. I'm like, what's going on right now? And as a former athlete, I know that when things don't feel right, that usually means you gotta take a second, pause, and then kind of re-audit. And whether it's make an adjustment or just be patient and continue on. So I went to the Father and I was like, oh, I wanted to go ahead and talk about self-control and discipline and how that's important, and it just doesn't feel good. So I had a couple more weeks left before I had to come up here, which was supposed to be last weekend. We'll get to that. And I was like, I got a couple weeks, I'll be okay. I'll just wait for the Father to move. And so I did. And what ended up happening was our community that I'm a part of, where my wife and I and our 2 children live, got slammed with sickness. Like no one's business. Like schools are shutting down. There's so many sick kids with the bug. And so I'm part of a leadership group, and we meet every week, and we always talk about all these different ways in which we can impact our community. How can we come together? How can we be an example? How can we pour life into the community, give people hope? There's also, on a more serious note, 2 athletes that had also taken their lives, 2 young teenage girls that had taken their lives from our community. So a lot of chaos, a lot of hurt, a lot of destruction. And as we were sitting around in our leadership group, my boss basically was just like, Paul, I want you to share on the power of words right now with our group. And this is one thing that I've always been very familiar with. It's one thing I've always kind of led with when things are going wrong, because that's how I was raised. My father, at 23 years old, ended up finding out that he had stage 4 colon cancer, which was, at that time, one of the most aggressive levels of cancer you can have at that age. And the doctors told him, hey, start saying your goodbyes. He was newly married to my mother at that time, and he was in the Navy. And it was at that moment that he began to kind of question his life, right? What does he believe in? And next thing you know, he finds himself in the Word. And in the Word, there's a particular account that he was drawn to. And that is the account of Joshua and Caleb. And the words that came forth from their mouth. And how what they spoke, one, it was in line with what the Father said, and second, it led to blessing and the fulfillment of promises. And so he understood in that moment, what I say has power. And so he became one of those guys that sometimes I can imagine are really annoying to doctors, where they come in, they're like, hey, chemo radiation, nope, you're going to die. Nope, doctors sometimes they usually don't like to hear no a lot from their patients, but my dad was adamant. He knew that he was going to have restoration and that he was going to live. So he kept on this mission and kept pouring life through words and prayer into his body. And I am blessed to say that he is still alive and well today. And that was obviously something that made such a tremendous impact in his life. He began to teach on that through ministry, about how powerful words are. And so for me, that was easy growing up. Something's wrong, boom, speak life into it right away. See what happens. And so I started sharing on this topic at my work, and it was at that moment that I went, this is it. Like, this is the message that I need to prepare. And then all of a sudden, Toby Mac's song pops up, and of course, it's Speak Life, if you're not familiar with that song. So it's on the radio, Joy FM, Speak Life. I'm like, oh, how apropos, right? Speak life to the deadest, darkest night. Speak life, when the sun won't shine and you don't know why. Look into the eyes of the brokenhearted. Watch them come alive as soon as you speak hope. You speak love. You speak life. No. Toby Mac does a way better job at that than I do. But I just thought, okay, obviously, here's these signs. All right, speak life. And so just diving into it, and it's funny, because the moment I make a shift in my teaching, guess what happens in my own household? sickness. I'm like, fantastic. We've been speaking life. Everyone else is sick. Well, we're speaking that we're not going to get sick, and then we get sick. And so first it was my daughter, next it was my son, next it was my wife, and I'm like, no, not this guy. This guy has to teach. This was going into last weekend. And next thing you know, we're getting closer and closer. What do you know? All of a sudden I wake up, and now I'm like superhuman when it comes to sickness. I eat raw garlic and apple cider vinegar shots every day, try to keep my pH balance healthy, gut health solid. So I'm like, hey, I got this. I just got it all covered right now. And I ended up waking up, and I had to reach out to David Wilburn. I was like, man, I hate to do this to you, but I'm feeling it. And so at that moment, he lifted me up, and then obviously others lifted me up. And something's really important about that, though, because, we speak life, but that doesn't make us bulletproof to obstacles and to challenges and to sickness sometimes. So in that moment, you have two options. You can either all of a sudden stop speaking life and now speak death and curses. Are you kidding me? Spoke life like you said, and now I'm sick with the flu. Come on. Or you can continue to speak life. Hey, I know I'm sick, but you know what? I'm going to be healed. I'm going to recover. I'm going to be okay. This is all right. 24 hours or less. Let's go. And so it's very important, and we're going to talk about that towards the end of this message, that it should never matter where we are at in our circumstances. We still have to make the choice to speak life. And so speaking life, feeling good. Well, because I wasn't speaking last weekend, Mom and Dad reached out, and they reminded me of that. Oh, are you speaking today? Why aren't you on there? Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking. I got sick. Oh, well, what are you going to be sharing on when you do get to? I'm going to be speaking on the powers of words, right? And speaking life. And then my dad gets on the phone. He's like, son, hey, Dad, I felt led when you were here in California a couple months ago that you and I were supposed to get into the Word and talk about the power of words. And I'm like, really? Let's do it. And we did. We got on FaceTime. We started sharing different, scriptures, and he would bring in some of his old teachings from like 30 years ago, and it was amazing. My dad and I have not gone into the Word together in years, because the last time we did, it was about why you should not eat pork, and why you should honor the Sabbath, and why the Sabbath is important. And let's just say that didn't go so well. And so, time goes on. All of a sudden, here's an opportunity now. So to me, it is more than obvious that this message is necessary. It's been a blessing in my life. It's always impactful to me when I come up here because it challenges me to really, truly live this out. All right? Not just come up here and teach you guys and share on what's on my heart, but be able to actually live it. So with that, I want to ask you a question. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. True or false? False, right? Now, we understand that, right? The body of believers, power of life, right? But it's safe to say that the world and those included within the body of Messiah at times don't really truly understand this, right? There are times where I see people all the time, especially in my profession. I work with athletes, and they're so result-based. And when something goes great, they're on cloud nine, they speak positive. When something goes wrong, they don't. They complain, they whine. And sometimes I see it with believers too. I see it in my own life. It happens. Even though I understand how powerful words are, there's so many times where in the same day I'll wake up. I'll use an example. My two babies, they wake up and I go, oh, I love you guys. You're the best babies in the world. And then 30 minutes later, there's like food all over my house. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? You're like the most crazy kids in the world, right? And so it's really important for myself, for the believers in the body, for those outside of the body, to have a review and to understand how important words are. Words are one of the most powerful sources of creative power. They can inspire movements. They can lift us up through adversity. They can connect our hearts. They can create life. But they can also create death. They can absolutely destroy creativity. Words can lead us down a path of self-doubt. And words can destroy relationships. I was reading today, just keep going in line with how much I believe this message is important. And my wife and I would do the verse of the day, right? YouVersion. How many of you have YouVersion on your phone? Okay, get the verse of the day. Verse of the day is too short, so we do chapter of the day based on their recommended verse of the day. And so we open it up, and today it's James 3. Now, the verse today has nothing to do with what we're about ready to speak today, but if you actually go to the chapter itself, James 3, we find out that James, first of all, tells us how dangerous or how, I don't know, let's go to it right now. I'm going to go to it. You have this part. And then it goes on to say this, for we all stumble in many things. If anyone does not stumble in word, he is a perfect man, able to also bridle the whole body. Indeed, we put bits in horses' mouths that they may obey us, and we turn their whole body. Look also at ships. Although they are so large and are driven by fierce winds, they are turned by a very small rudder wherever the pilot desires. Even so, the tongue is a little member and boasts great things. Continuing on. But no man can tame the tongue. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our God and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the likeness of God. Out of the same mouth proceed blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not be so. So I'm reading this and I'm going, and it's a refresher for me, and it encourages me because as much as I believe this concept is very familiar to us in the body, there's obviously, all right, an example of how important it is to always be reminded of the power of the tongue and the words that come out of our mouth. Because it is sometimes very easy. We can bless the Father, but all of a sudden we can curse our fellow man. And we do that in multiple different ways. So today what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to dive through Scripture and look at science to gain understanding on how powerful words are and how important it is that we speak life. And then we're going to talk about the different levels in which we use our words. And lastly, we are going to go ahead and cover some action items for us to begin to implement in our lives. So before we get started, this message needs some speaking life done into it. We need some positive words in here. But Father, we come before you today on your most set-apart day, and we are so grateful for this chance to come together. I am so blessed to be here amongst my fellow brothers and sisters. Father, it's been a while. It's good to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the message today. Thank you that there will be hope found in this message, that there will be challenges found in this message, Father. I pray that your words will speak through me, Father, that if there's something that I share today that is not of you, Father, that it will not penetrate the hearts, Father, of those who are here in person, those online, Father, and those who will watch in the future. Father, I only want to speak your words. Father, may we truly learn through this teaching how important our words are and what they can do to change the lives of those in our families and those in our communities. Father, we love you and we thank you for this time. And we say this in Yeshua's name. Amen. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to go back to the beginning. That's a very popular phrase in this movement of ours, right? Where we go back to the beginning. And so, creation through words. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of Yahweh was hovering over the face of the waters. Then Yahweh said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, and that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. The creator of all things used words to bring forth everything. Creation itself started with words. Now, as I went and I was studying this topic, I branch out every once in a while. I really enjoy to watch some TEDx talks sometimes. How many of you enjoy that as well? Anybody else? Hey, I'm not alone. Good. They got some good stuff on there. There was a gentleman, his name was Andrew Bennett, and he is a business consultant for multiple companies throughout the London area. And basically what he does is he goes and shares with businesses how vital words are when it comes to growth and success. Now, He's also a member in London of what's called the Magic Circle. Now, this circle is a bunch of sleight-of-hand artists, all right? So we're not conjuring up spirits here, all right? Yahweh is very clear about that. But one thing that he thought was interesting is he was trying to, kind of create this talent, this illusion art. He said one thing he noticed is that a lot of these different artists would use the word abracadabra before they would go ahead and make their sleight-of-hand move. And he thought it was silly. He thought he was childish, and he never used it. And one day, he actually wanted to look into the word. Like, where does the word come from? Why do they say it? And he ended up reaching out to the linguistics department at MIT. And he ended up getting a response back, and this is what they had to say. Okay? Abracadabra is actually an Aramaic word, avra kadavra, which simply means it will be created in my words. So that is the root of that weird word that some of us are familiar with from our childhood. It will be created in my words. Well, that instantly blows Bennett's mind. He's like, whoa, all right, I get it. I'm going to sit there, I'm going to tell you the move I'm going to do, and I'm going to say abracadabra, and I've created what I've spoken, and I make it happen through this sleight-of-hand trick. And he gets convicted, and then all of a sudden he starts to apply that into his life, and he starts to understand that he creates what he speaks. Now, it's clear that concept comes from where? The creator of the universe, right? Set this in motion. You create what you speak. So I want to ask another question. What kind of words are coming out of our mouths? Are they creative or are they limiting? Are they inspiring or are they negative? Are they generative or are they destructive? Are they of the Father and His Word or are they of the enemy? Do they create life or death? It's important that we ask these questions and that we kind of focus on this because it literally becomes a matter of life and death. Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." That is heavy. And it should be enough for us to start changing the words we speak. But we do live in a society nowadays that says, prove it, right? I know with my athletes, I'll sit there and I'll share something, a drill or an exercise that'll help them improve. And you know what they say? Well, show me why. Don't just tell me, you got to show me. Prove it. And what usually happens, if I can show them the science of how the body works and moves, all of a sudden their conviction. Now, I want them to get to a point where my words are enough. We should be at a point where the words of the Father should be enough. But we are going to go through the science, and we are going to find out what is actually happening when words are coming out of our mouth. Here's where we're going to start. All right? There's a book out there called The Miracle of Water by Masaru Emoto. Now, how many of you are familiar with this book, The Miracle of Water? One gentleman in the crowd. That boy Mark. Got to read up. Emoto is an internationally renowned Japanese researcher who has gained worldwide acclaim for his high-speed photography work on the connection of words and water. So Emoto's research, what he does is he visually captures the structure of water at the moment of freezing. And what he's able to do is, by capturing it with these high-speed cameras, he can show the direct consequences of destructive words, as well as words of love and appreciation. And so in a nutshell, I want you to go ahead and I just want to have this, you guys have this picture, all right? There's only one here. I don't have two, all right? But there would be like two of these right here, okay? He just used plain mineral water in these studies. But basically you have two samples of mineral water. He's got his camera. And one, he's sitting there and he's capturing these moments as there's negative, harsh words being spoken over this mineral water. And he steps on over to here. does the same thing. Words of love, positivity, affection. And then what ends up happening is he goes and now looks at the formation of water crystals through the photos that he had taken. And what he finds in his research is that the sample, let's start with this one. The sample that had love and affection and positivity, beautiful water crystals, beautiful formations, pure. And then you go over here to the other sample, and he looks at the photos, and what he sees is mutated water crystals, ugly, deformed water crystals. And so all of a sudden he's sitting there going, wow, what I can speak can actually change water itself. That's his theory. Now here's the important part. Words contain the element of vibration, frequency, which plays a vital role in the grand scheme of nature. Emoto's research showed that when positive words were used, the water crystals would be beautiful and pure. And when negative, harsh words were used, the water crystals would be deformed. Now this is really, really interesting. I have to have this on the board because this is so cool. Okay? Here's a question. What if you're speaking different languages? Right? That's what he has to say. When water is exposed to a word from Japanese, German, English, Korean, or any other language with the same meaning, crystals similar in appearance are formed. Thank you. And its equivalent expression in Japanese, arigato. Despite being completely different words, look surprisingly similar as crystals. Why would different words, albeit with similar meanings, have this effect on crystals? Moving on. Although words of different languages may look and sound different, they are all formed according to the principle of nature. So regardless of the language, when water is exposed to words with similar meanings, the crystals formed are similar. Words are vibrations, and when our bodies, with all the water coursing through them, are exposed to good words, we can't help but experience health and well-being. And in the same way, bad words and their bad vibrations will predictably have a negative effect on our bodies. So we should not be surprised when destructive words destroy. Kind of interesting, isn't it? Life and death. Now, I'm pretty sure when the writer of Proverbs was writing Proverbs 18:21, they didn't have high-speed cameras back then. And they didn't have this scientific research available. So what's science doing right now? It's just proving that which the Father had already established. Gonna get some water. Pure water. You are good water. All right. Want to go for another study? Oh, yeah. Thank you, Adam. All right, here goes another one. According to Andrew Newberg, MD, Mark Waldman, words can literally change our brains. In their book, Words Can Change Your Brain, they write this. A single word has the power to influence the expression of genes that regulate physical and emotional stress. Positive words can alter the expression of genes, strengthening areas in our frontal lobes and promoting the brain's cognitive functioning. They propel the motivational centers of the brain into action. By holding a positive and optimistic word in your mind, you stimulate frontal lobe activity. This area includes specific language centers that connect directly to the motor cortex responsible for moving you into action. And as our research has shown, the longer you concentrate on positive words, the more you begin to affect other areas of the brain. Functions in the parietal, we'll go with it, lobe start to change, which changes your perception of yourself and the people you interact with. A positive view of yourself will bias you towards seeing the good in others, whereas a negative self-image will include you towards suspicion and doubt. Over time, the structure of your thalamus will also change in response to your conscious words, thoughts, and feelings. And we believe that the thematic changes affect the way in which you perceive reality. So in their book and through their studies, words have the power to transform our reality. We meditate, and if we speak words of life, then our brain functions at a much higher level. And we know if that happens, what happens to your body? Our bodies begin to function at a much higher level. Well, it goes for the opposite, right? What's going on in between here? If it's negative, if it's not of the Father, guess what's going to start happening to your body as well? Right? Your well-being is going to go down. Your body is not going to function the way the Creator wanted your body to function. And it begins with words and the thoughts and the brain. Words are a powerful weapon. Now, here's a couple things real quick, just covering words before we move on. Words are a powerful weapon against the enemy. So let's move away from ourselves for a second, just talk about what words can do. Yeshua in the wilderness, right? He used words in the moment of temptation. The enemy came to him, the enemy tempted him, and what did he say? It is written. Boom, words. Revelation 12:11 says, they triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. We combat the enemy with the words that come out of our mouth. How many of you have seen War Room? War Room. Anyone? Only a handful of you? Okay. There's a moment in that movie, and so there's this woman, she's kind of the main focus of the story, and her husband wants to leave her. He doesn't want to stay in the marriage. And so this woman ends up becoming a friend with this older woman who has a lot of wisdom, and she's a prayer warrior. She speaks life. She's telling him, you got to go to war, girl. You got to speak life. You got to pray for your marriage. And what ends up happening is there's actually a scene where she goes outside. She's got this monster house, and she's in the backyard, and she just has had it. And she starts just going to battle in the spiritual realm with her words. And she's telling the enemy, you will not have my marriage. My marriage is going to be restored and healed. Get out. And as she continues to be this warrior, all of a sudden, the heart of her husband begins to change. The enemy, all of a sudden, has to back off from her marriage. So words are incredibly powerful when we need to go to war in the spiritual realm. Words can also bring about healing and restoration. The woman with flow of blood, what did she say before she moved? Does anyone know? She sees Yeshua walking by. Now, I don't know if she said this to herself or she said it out loud, but she said, if only I can reach the hem of his garment, I will be healed. She said it first, then she moved. What were her words? They were words of life. If I can touch him, I know I can be healed, right? The centurion soldier, same thing, right? Meets Yeshua. You don't even have to show up. Just say the word. I know that healing will come forth. Words are powerful when it comes to healing and restoration. Words are also a very vital part in our walk of faith, right? Starts at the base of the mountain. You make a commitment. You look up to the Creator, and what do you say? I do. I want to follow you. I will do your ways. It starts with vows, with words. And then from there comes forth action. We'll talk about that at the very end of this message. Words are so important in our walk. So, do we all have a pretty clear picture right now through the two studies of how important words are? So now what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the different levels in which we can use our words. The first one is called personal, all right, the personal level. How many of you talk to yourselves? Go ahead, put them up. It's okay. I'm going to put both my hands up because I am terrible at this. I talk to myself. If someone had a camera on me, they would probably be a little concerned for me. Let's face it, we all do it, right? We all talk to ourselves, whether it's we're in the car, we're on our way to work. What I normally do is I'm like amping myself up for that day. Work's been pretty intense for me these last couple of weeks, and so I usually am sitting in my car and like, you can do it. You are strong. You can make it. You're going to change lives. So I talk to myself all the time. And then if something happens between me and Lindsay, I also am in the car talking to myself too. So constantly doing it. In the world of business and self-help mentors, there's this concept called the internal patter. And what eternal patter is carefully designed words that influence what you believe, what you see, and ultimately what is created in and through your life. I'm going to go ahead and share a personal experience with you. Back in my days as a professional baseball player, I show up from California out here into the Midwest, and my first couple performances off of the mound were terrible. They were awful. And all of a sudden, you can imagine what starts going on in my head. I lose confidence. I have low self-esteem. I start talking to myself, I'm not good enough. You can't do this. What are you doing? You just moved all the way to the middle of the country to keep playing, and you're terrible. I'm just telling myself this, and it's not helping. It just stays the same. Every time I'm out there, I just can't figure it out. And finally, one day, my coach comes up to me. Very simple man. This man did not share a lot of words, but when he did, it was profound. It's like a Yoda guy. And he said, Paul, just breathe. You'll be okay. You'll be fine. There's a saying in baseball, and there's a saying in other sports, and that the game is 90% mental, 10% is skill. Now, we do need to understand, though, that skills are necessary. Knowledge is necessary, right? We still have to move. We can't just sit there and proclaim and speak words of life and then just sit there and wait for it to magically happen. We have to do something. But here's the thing, when we do have the skills and the knowledge, oftentimes what keeps us from reaching our potential or moving forward in the direction we want to move forward is what's in between our ears. What's happening at that personal level with the words going on in our mind. And that was very real for me when I was having those rough performances. But the coach helped me. He told me it's going to be okay. Just breathe. Whew, okay, just breathe. And then I had another great example of someone who was doing something that was leading to success, and that was one of my teammates, Tim Brown. And Tim Brown was not a flashy guy at all. He didn't throw very hard. He wasn't this big pitcher, he didn't have great size. But there was one particular thing that he did, and I believe it's why he had so much success. He was probably the most successful pitcher that I've ever had the privilege to play with. The reason I believe he was so successful is because he would go through this routine before the game in the locker room, where now I kind of understand it. He would have this eternal patter of these words that he would speak to himself. So he'd be in the locker room and he'd wait for it to get quiet, right? He'd wait for everyone to leave because most of the time you don't want people probably to see this, but he's in his little cubby and he just starts chit-chatting with himself. He's having a conversation with himself out loud. You are good. You work hard. You will be successful. Just all these things about what his performance was going to be. You will strike batters out. Your fastball will move, and we're looking over at him. We're like, what's this guy's deal? Why is he sitting over there in the corner talking to himself? Well, one day I finally asked him, what are you saying to yourself, Tim? And he's like, I speak positive words before I go out and get ready to go perform for the day. And it helps me. And he does it every time that he goes to pitch. He goes through that same internal pattern. And you know what? It worked. So after that, I went, well, if it works for him, odds are it'll work for me. And I began to do that, where I would wake up in the morning, I'd get headphones on, I'd have my meal, and then after that, I'd start this process of going through my day and speaking life into my day as an athlete. So how does this then all connect to our lives as believers? How can we begin to make sure that what is going on in between the ears and what we're speaking to ourselves is allowing us to reach what the Father has planned for us? Well, I believe it's by hearing, by reading, but also by professing the Word. And we have already gone through this today, but we're going to extend off of the Shema. Deuteronomy 6 will continue on to say this: these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and you shall talk. Everyone say talk. Talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk along by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. To know the commands and the ways of the Father, we need to either hear about them or we need to read them, right? It's kind of like that skills and knowledge thing. But then from there, the key is profess them. You have to profess them to yourself, to your children, to those around you, right? When you're sitting in your home, you can sit in your house by yourself, can't you? You can sit around your family members. Well, also, how about when you walk along the way? When you're going to the grocery store? When you're at your place of employment? Speaking the ways of the Father in those different settings is a great way for us to, one, start seeing changes in our life that the Father wants for us, but secondly, start to see changes in the lives of those around us in our community, which takes us to the next level, and that's the interpersonal level. You see, it took my coach to tell me it was going to be okay for me to relax. It took a teammate with a certain routine to be my example of how I could have success as a baseball player. The words that we speak, they don't just have an impact on our lives alone. They impact those all around us. Words of life can lead to life, and words of death can lead to death. And now we're going to go to probably, I would say, the most profound example of this, and that is Numbers 13:31. But the men who had gone up with him, Caleb, said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they have spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature. There we saw the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight. And so we were in their sight." We know how the story goes. That report right there, that didn't lead to life. It led to death. And in fact, it led to the Creator himself saying these words, "The carcasses of you who have complained against me shall fall in the wilderness, all of you who were numbered according to your entire number, from 20 years old and above." Yahweh had had enough after that report. The words that we speak, especially if they go against what the Father has already established, will never lead to life. They can't. We need to be very careful with the words that we say when we're around other people, because 10 men changed the course of Israel. Now on the flip side, we got Joshua and Caleb, and they're like, "Whoa, hold up, time out. All right, bad report, step aside for a second. The land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land." Ching, saying what Yahweh said. "If Yahweh delights in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against Yahweh, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their protection has departed from there, and Yahweh is with us. Do not fear them." That report right there, 2 men changed the course of the history for Israel, right? One report took the lives of, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And then you have these words of life, this good report that leads to fulfillment of promises and blessings. Their words lined up with the Father's. And in return, they were given the opportunity to cross the Jordan and take the land. Now again, we could probably spend another hour and a half talking about just this passage. There's so many valuable lessons on how powerful words are here. But I want to go ahead and say this again. Joshua and Caleb still had to do something following their good report. They still had to physically cross the Jordan. They still had to go to battle in order to continue to move towards the promises of the Father. So it's not just about the words coming out of our mouth. but it's also about those actions that are following those words. It's like a puzzle piece. It's a formula. Speak life, speak of the Father, but then you have to move. And you got to keep going forward and keep believing. They did not allow their circumstances to dictate what came out of their mouth. Would have been probably pretty easy. It was easy for the other 10. They saw what was in that land, and they were terrified. But Joshua and Caleb, doesn't matter. Does not matter. Right? I use an example of when I was sick. You know, it's my circumstance. I had spoken so much life to avoid sickness, and then I get sick. But what are you going to do in that moment? You're going to allow that simple circumstance to change what comes out of your mouth? And we all have different things in our lives that put us in different circumstances. The goal for us should be, when we are in the middle of those circumstances, to still continue to speak what the Father has already spoken, to speak life. And we all see it on the news. We know the world needs it, right? See how chaotic things are getting right now. So how do we make an impact in our community? How do we make an impact in the world? Well, number one, kind of like what our leadership group met with after the sickness and the suicides were taking place. Well, one, we have to physically just speak life into our community. That's number one. From there, pour life into it. But then from there, we have to have action, and we have to be an example. So for us working with athletes, we're not just going to speak life for our athletes. When we're physically in front of our athletes, we continue to do the same thing. We speak life over them in the moment. We show them the power of words. We get them to understand that their words are meaningful. You start creating this shift in our culture because our culture needs it. This shift is so important. I work with so many athletes that allow social media and, again, emotions and results to dictate what comes out of their mouth. And I can imagine to dictate what's in their head. The world needs us now more than ever to start pouring life into it verbally and then being a living example of how to do it. And there's some amazing examples in here of when times get tough, you've lost a loved one, someone's betrayed you, but what do? You still persevere. You still believe in the Father. You still speak words of life. You still praise the Father. That is so powerful. That's such an amazing example to not only us as believers, but to the world itself. So here are some action items that I want us to consider. First, I want us to go home and I want us to ask this question. You can either do it to yourself, you can talk to yourself, or you can sit with your loved one, or with others. Is what I'm creating with my words creating life or death? And that's in like everything. I've had to use that example in Facebook sometimes. Is what I'm writing on Facebook creating life or death? Secondly, monitor those words in two different levels. One, the personal level. Monitor those words when you're by yourself. What's going on in your head? I have to capture so much in my head sometimes because my head goes 1,000,000 miles an hour, if you haven't already found that out. This goes much faster than this at times. But there's times where this will start to say those things, and all of a sudden I got to go, what am I doing? No way, stop. Don't speak those ways. Don't speak about my kids like that. Hooligans. They're blessings. Your word says so. I love them so much, even though it's hard sometimes and stressful, right? The word says that they're blessings. Now remember, as a parent, I also have to understand there's also action. I can't just say that they're blessings and they whoop-a-doo turn into blessings. So still have to have action, right? You like that? Also, let's monitor how the words are being used when we're around others. I see so many people, and I'll put myself out there too. When I'm by myself or if I'm in a certain circle, the words, oh yeah, it's so easy to speak about life in here. We're in church, right? What happens when we go to work? What happens when we're around those who are not a part of the body? And they're just blah, 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 blah. All week long. What are we doing? Are we engaging in that? or are we combating that with words of life? My coworkers are starting to get to the point where they're just sick of it because I'll either just completely walk away now and isolate myself and say, nah, I'll wait till you guys are done and then I'll come back. Or I'll just sit there and I'll be like, hey, be cool, speak life. And they're like, God, you're so dumb. So dumb. But we should monitor, all right, what kind of words are coming out of our mouth on a personal level and an interpersonal level. And then lastly, and this is something that I started to do this week. I have done it before. It's off and on. I want to be more consistent in it. Something that my dad showed me when I was young, but that is verbally professing the word, not just reading the word. It's very easy to, go to YouVersion and read the word or put on the fancy dancy Englishmen to read it for you, which I don't know if that counts. But I think it's powerful when you read it, but then right after you're done reading it, profess it. I feel like there's real power in that. Because one, gets into here a lot more efficiently. All right? It sticks better. And then from there, it becomes like this saying that you go around the day. It becomes this pattern where you're just regurgitating what the word has said, right, in the morning. So when you wake up in the morning, start verbally professing the word and see what happens in your homes, see what begins to happen in your communities. And with that, we're going to go to the Father. Father, thank you for this time again together. Thank you for this blessing of being able to come up here and share what you've put on my heart, Father. And again, I know that it's review. I know. But there's someone out there, Father, that needs to understand the power of words, that needs to begin to challenge themselves on the words that come out of their mouth, that the words are going on in between their ears, Father. I pray that we are empowered, Father, to speak life into our communities despite our circumstances, Father. To say what your word has already said. And then to live out those words through action, Father. To be an example to others. Father, we are so grateful for your word, for the lessons in your word. We're grateful that you also provide us the opportunities to look through your word in a different lens of knowing that, Father, your word says that life and death is in the power of the tongue, and then you show us what physically happens when words come out of our mouth and how they impact our bodies, how they impact those around us, and creation itself. All of nature is impacted, Father, by the very words in our mouth. I know that has made a tremendous impact on my life and is going to help me to guard my tongue, Father. To guard it. The tongue, just like it says in James, it can stir the whole body. It can lead it down a path of destruction and evil, or it can lead it down a path of life. Father, may we bless you and bless others, Father, with our tongues, with our words. Inspire us this week, Father, to make an impact in this area in our lives. We love you. We are grateful. We are grateful for what Yeshua did for us, Father. And it's by his blood, by the word of our testimonies, that we can go and defeat the enemy. And we say this in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Shalom, David Wilbur here. Hey, thanks for joining us. I hope you were blessed by the message. I want to invite you guys to subscribe to our channel if you want to see more messages like this. We're always updating it with more videos and information. And also, if the Lord puts it on your heart, please partner with us in sharing this message. You can do that by going to our website, freedomhillcommunity.com, and you can just send a donation. We also have lots of other stuff on the website, like articles and additional videos and things like that. So we'd love for you to join us. And thank you again. Shalom.